What's up, Cloudheads, and welcome back to Clouded Stocks Funky Friday. This is our first edition going through a different format to look at the market and overview what's happened for the entire week. So we're going to start in with some words of the week taken directly from the Clouded Stocks newsletter, trying to drive home a very important point, mainly having to do with psychology. We're going to look at a breadth overview where we look at the NYSE, the NASDAQ, and the NYSE American across advances and declines, new highs and new lows, and exchange volume for each day of the week. We're going to take a look under the personal hood of my own trading. I'm going to show you my best trade of the week. I'm going to show you my worst trade of the week because each individual trader like myself really represents all traders and what we're going through in the market every day, kind of what this show's all about. And lastly, I'm going to go through 10 different tickers, kind of charts in 60 seconds format, but we're going to go through 3 main ETFs, 7 individual stocks, and of course, 2 time frames per. So let's get right to it, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Launch us a like button there, and let's boogie.
Nothing gives one person so much advantage over another as to remain always cool and unruffled under all circumstances.
Man, and TJ sure got that one right. Who would know that one of our founding fathers of America also had a trader's brain? Genius. And this market will test you. This market will try your patience. So exactly like Thomas Jefferson said, you gotta stay cool, you gotta stay unruffled because price pays, and it can also kick you right in the butt if you try to go against it. Now, we take a look at breadth, literally looking at thousands of stocks across the NYSE, the NASDAQ, and the NYSE American. Let's go! And first, looking at Tuesday, coming off the holiday shortened week, we can see the same tone that was set on Friday with eerie, spooky vibes across all 3 NYSE, NASDAQ, and NYSE American. This wasn't the worst day of the week, but it definitely set the tone with advances and declines, and also kind of hitting the brakes with highs to lows. You can see NASDAQ over here started to establish more lows than highs. Not going to be looking great for the tech sector as we head throughout the week, and this just started it. On Wednesday, we saw a similar vibe, if not a little bit calmer, closer to even across all 3 NYSE, NASDAQ, and NYSE American for advances and declines, slightly leaning towards the red. You could also see that the lows did start to kick up and pick up from where they were on Monday, beating that 101 number with a low number of 134. The high number, still pretty decent for NYSE and NYSE American, with slightly more red volume. One thing of note is the quality names in the personal scans with the last price above $15, volume above 500,000 on that day, still quite a bit more 52-week highs at 46 than 52-week lows at 9. But was this the calm before the storm on Thursday? And there it is, as suspected, confirmed on Thursday. Advances and declines picking up big time for the red over there. Way more declines than advances across all 3 of the majors. One thing of note is that new highs slowed down significantly in the NYSE and the NYSE American, and they continued to suck in the NASDAQ with only 70 at the high with 127 at the low. More red volume than green volume across all 3. And in the personal scans, we also noted a little downtick in the 52-week highs with an uptick in the 52-week lows, and quite a few names starting to open with gap downs. And the breadth reading today on Friday ended the week in the worst fashion possible, with more declines than advances, leading declines compared to all of the days of the week. Not very many advances. You can see the colors. You can see the weight. Look at that red volume. Look at those red declines versus the green. Lows, more lows in the NASDAQ than we've had all week, with the least amount of highs that we've seen in the NASDAQ all week as well. And pretty much closer to even with the highs and the lows in NYSE and NYSE American, whereas earlier in the week, the highs were much outweighing the lows. So not really how we want to close the week here. Goodness. Let's look at the charts. Leading off on the daily chart with Google and my worst trade of the week on Wednesday, 6/21 of 2023. You can see I was trying to play for the shoot above the 26 period line, maybe also that blue 9 period line. But after a short little wick shooting up above the 26, it went into retreat mode from there. Let's see what actually happened on the intraday and break down why it was my personal worst trade of the week. even though it was still a very manageable loss. Going against process still has to count as the worst loss of the week. I like to buy on the 30, often sell on the 30 or the 15. So let's see what happened on the 30 to confirm the Google action. I bought at 6:31 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So right in that first candlestick of the day on 6/21 of this month. And you could see that it shot above the 26 and the 9-period line in that first half hour. That was the price that I was very interested in, above the 122.50. It could have been a sell point crossing underneath that first orange line, the 26 period. That would have been a very, very tight stop. But for me and my system, I should have at least sold it as it failed the 9-period line. Yes, it was in that same half hour. However, I waited until about, 7:26 a.m. So that was during the second bar over there. Again, a little too far underneath the 9-period line where I wanted to sell it. So that's why Google's going to go as my worst trade of the week. You know, I do day trade stocks, and I like to trade one stock at a time. When my system's rolling, I'm going to increase my position size. So my own system hasn't allowed me to increase my position size this month. Right now, my batting average is 3 wins and 6 losses on the month, but I'm still showing a profit on the month. So that tells me that I have to keep my position size fairly small like I did with Google. If I keep my stops just a little bit tighter, I have a few of these where I let them get underneath that 9-period line, just like this example, and that would keep me even more so in the green for this month. But I'm pretty happy still being up for the month with 3 wins and 6 losses. Let's register Google as the worst trade of my week. And my best trade of the week was in fact break even, but unlike Google, I followed my process. So I'm registering it as the best trade of the week. On the daily, I thought we had a chance to break that little downtrend line, and I did end up buying it close to the low of the day, which I'll show you on the intraday. We didn't quite touch that 26-period line, the orange line there, but maybe we have a date with it on Monday. I don't know, just didn't really have the volume to break out to really support me holding this one. And also the rest of the market wasn't really that strong. So process. My results were I sold it for 3 cents more than I bought it. We'll call that break even, but at least it wasn't a loss. So let's see the intraday. I bought Shopify in that first half hour of the day at 6:55 a.m. That was for $62.35. Sold it at 7:26 a.m. So what was that? The second candlestick of the day there. So what had happened was it opened kind of within that first candlestick. It ended up closing above. I didn't really like how it shot underneath that 9-period line. You know, it didn't actually get to the price that I really wanted to sell it at. But, you know, I honored my process on this one. I said, you know what? The ultimate stop was just a few cents under where I bought it. But instead of taking a small loss, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to break even on this one. And so the best trade of the week is kind of funny how ironic that could be, because the market ends up turning around and kind of kicking you because it went up from there for a couple of points. Like I said, though, I stuck with my system. It did violate that 9-period line, so I'll do this one 10 times out of 10 to break even rather than take a loss on something, because you just never know. Once it violates that line, you never know how far down it could go. You got to stick with your system. Focus on your process rather than your results. So I'm going to stick with Shopify and say it was my best trade of the week. Even though it took off a little bit without me, I'd do it the same way again. And now let the real market overview begin. First with our 3 ETFs and our 7 stock tickers. So we've got QQQ. The ETFs, we're going to really zoom out just because there's so many stocks inside. We're going to look at the monthly view here. So you can see this month we got a little shooter wick into that 370, 372 and some change area to be exact. Several months back, early 2022, we made some attempts at that 370, 371 area only to be rejected. So 370, pretty key area on the NASDAQ, on the QQQ, NASDAQ 100. We, like I said, got to that 370 area, rejected. Now we're just above 360. You can see, like I said, this is a zoomed out view. Our 9-month line is still below our 26-month line. Now, price has been kind of riding up that upward curving 9-month line, but we have yet to get that cross. We are still far above the Ichimoku Cloud, so you do like to see that there. Perhaps with that 370, 371, 72 area acting as some resistance, we do see a little bit of a pullback. Do we go to that 26 period line? What's the value of that line? Let's see here. Do we go to that 331.49 area? I don't know. I mean, that would be a pretty deep, pretty heavy pullback. It really just all depends on the direction of this market. Let's see the daily look here. Definitely said daily, however, I sure meant weekly. And I was just noticing, it's kind of funny how, the longer you do this, you're like, well, this could happen, or well, that can happen. And if anyone says something besides that, they're probably full of it. I'm not going to tell you something with certainty on this program here. I look at the Ichimoku Cloud, I look at candlesticks because all of it means price, which of course is the final verdict. So there's no certainties. Any of these one indicators don't really mean as much on their own. I use several strong ones that I feel all have to do with price as the cake, volume as the icing. So right now on the weekly, we can see that we were just stuck in an inside week. If we did retreat to that 9-period line, that's around the 340, 341 area. I don't know if I even necessarily see that happening myself. Perhaps just slowing down a little bit because QQQ has really been shooting up the right side of that base pretty ferociously. I don't really think it's going to pull back into the Ichimoku Cloud. I don't really think it's going to even pull back to the 9-week line, but maybe it takes a breather and lets the 9-week line catch up to it. Let's look at our next chart. Now we got to look at IWM on the monthly because if it was strong for the big dogs on QQQ, it's kind of the opposite for the little guy on IWM. So you can see this month we tried to poke into that 190, 191 area, which is very, very key because in March, we set an activation bar, meaning it was the high point and it was the low point. Now in April, May, and June, none of those 3 months have gone above the high or below the low, meaning that March is the activation bar. So like I said, that high around 191, we tried to go above that this month, getting within just a couple of points, just shy of 190, but now rejected. We got the shooter wick there. We're underneath the 9-month line, just trying to close above it, and a lot of indecision left in IWM to end the month. Very curious what the daily looks like. Oops, I did it again, Brittany, and talked about the daily where it is the weekly on IWM. So honing in on the weekly, we can see that this week we lost a couple key levels. In those previous 2 weeks, really across June, all of the weeks, we tried to get into that Ichimoku Cloud, which you can see we did. We even shot above the 26-week line. Awesome. Boom. Great. The little guy advances. Now, lost the 26. Just almost leaving that Ichimoku Cloud. I think, I can't really tell if we're in there or we're out, but not really where you want to be. I mean, it was a failure at that rejection point. Like I said, getting in with a couple of dollars. Now, not a huge sell-off. We can see that no major volume has really sold off yet on IWM, so perhaps we're just creating the little handle. I mean, we got this kind of nice cup formation there. The 9 could be getting ready to curve above the 26, but if we lose that 9-period line, that 9-week line, I won't be as confident. Just a little bit of pullback without major sell-off volume can be constructive. Let's just see what happens. Hopping over to the semiconductor space. Starting in on the monthly with SMH, VanEck Semiconductor ETF, you can see something kind of similar as with QQQ and IWM. You see that wick, that shooter wick this month, got to within a few dollars of the left side of the base. So look at those several months on the left side of the base. That was in late 2021, early 2022 looks like. 159, all 3 months kind of touched on that price, couldn't get to 160. This month, back over on the right side of the base after that huge monthly cup, we can see that, like I said, we got to that shooter wick several dollars shy. So are we going to continue to shoot above? Are we going to do a little pullback for a couple of months? Down below this current month, you could see very interesting things happening with our colored lines, our 9-month line and our orange 26-month line. We're trying to get a big key bullish cross of that shorter span 9-month above the longer span 26-month. We always want the blue above the orange, the shorter span above the longer span. Let's look at, you probably thought I was going to say daily, but it's the weekly. And as we suspected, very constructive action with SMH on the weekly. We can see that February and March were kind of just chopping around inside the Ichimoku Cloud. And that's exactly what happens inside the Ichimoku Cloud. But all along, even in the aforementioned February and March, we were riding that 9-period, that 9-week line up. In April, we tried to dip into the 9 period line and the Ichimoku Cloud. Didn't happen. In May, continued to shoot up. In June, continued to shoot up. So a breather could be due and absolutely welcome and fine for semiconductors. I mean, look at a lot of these monsters, a lot of these leaders like Nvidia. AMD is getting all these bad reports and the stock's falling off the face of the earth, but no, it's not. It's actually holding up just fine. So semiconductors could use a little breather, could be good for the market. We looked at several ETFs. Now let's take a real look at some rapid fire stocks I'm interested in for the next week ahead. And here we go with a little more rapid fire, daily into the intraday, starting with Upstart. And this is really what you want to see for a bullish looking chart besides just one thing. So let's go through it real quick. Chiku is free. Our trailing 26 line uses the closing prices. Free means it's above the price bars. Check, we got that. Our shorter term 9-day line is above the longer term 26-day line. Check, got that. Price did close above the 26, however, not above the 9. So that is the one thing that's missing. And we are above the large Ichimoku Cloud. So stocks in an uptrend is generally what I like to trade. Upstart, very interesting because it could bounce off that 26 line. Maybe that's the line in the sand, and it could have some nice upside for Upstart here. Let's dive to the intraday. And we can see pretty much all day, similar to that Google chart I showed as my worst trade of the week. We shot above the 30-minute 9-period line in the first half hour, only to lose it and be riding down it almost all of the day. Now, in the last hour of the day, we did shoot up and close above that 9-period line, so 9 of those little 30-minute blocks right there. But for me, it wasn't significant to buy. Certainly wasn't going to hold this thing through the weekend. I don't even really like to hold something overnight with my trading account. I like to swing it during the day, ride it up that 9-period line, sell it for a nice profit, rinse, wash, repeat. Let's look at the next. AMD shows a similar look to Upstart, but it is below that 26-period line. The 26 has not crossed above the 9. The most interesting part is that huge gap up you can see on the chart. And now today, we weren't exactly able to pull away from the high before the gap up. But I think this formation is really, reversal prone. Could be attracted like a magnet back up to that 26 and that 9. If SMH and semiconductors and Nvidia, that type of thing, can hang on, AMD could have a really nice run off this downtrend that it's been establishing. Let's see an intraday chart. And could we be actually starting a more significant reversal on AMD? I don't know, but the 10-day, 30-minute chart seemed to show that, going down in the first several half hours to a low point of 107.46. We're able to shoot above the 9, shoot above the 26, and we even got a crossover of the 9 above the 26. And we know we love those shorter time periods above those longer time periods. We were rejected at the Ichimoku Cloud, so definitely some room for AMD to consider on Monday. Another strong semiconductor name I'm going to consider for next week is ON Semiconductor, where on the daily chart looks a little more like Upstart above that orange 26-period line, sandwiched in between the 9-period line with the 9 above the 26. Chiku free, we're above the Ichimoku Cloud. Definitely a stock in an uptrend, but we're working with that little mini downtrend from the 93.44 price. Let's see if we can shoot up and rocket up above the 9 in this little downtrend formation next week. What's happening on the intraday? Confirming a theme in the tech space of some hard pennies and not so easy dollars, ON just didn't really move that much today. I mean, you could see that it was under the 9-period line for a lot of the day, didn't end up cruising above, didn't really break above the Ichimoku Cloud and have a significant move, so I didn't do anything with this one, but I will be watching it next week. Snow is a nice looking one on the daily chart, trying to get above some points of resistance set in May and throughout June. Today, we got that little shooter wick trying to go above the 9-period line. Not quite able to do so, but that puts it in very, very fascinating position to watch for next week because you got the little mini downtrend here. You got that shooter wick like I just mentioned. Several failed prices it couldn't get above in May and June. So one day of strong volume could really send this thing on a rocket, make it very, very tradable. Let's see what the intraday has to hold. Snow was actually very viable today on the 30-minute chart. Definitely missed this one. You can see in the first half hour, it dipped underneath the 26-period line, only to close above. Really was riding along that all the rest of the day. Even at some point in the day, the 9-period line crossed above the 26-period line. So really, really nice for snow there. Would you have sold at the top? I don't know. Maybe. We like to always think we can. But you got that wick in that half hour, a slightly lower high in that next half hour. So either one of those would have provided a nice sell point for snow. Still big time on my watch list for next week because of the daily chart, however. Love how this thing's setting up. Airbnb daily chart fills me with intrigue. You can see some high price points and some areas of resistance in February. You can see them in March. You can see them in May. And now you can see them in June. We're coming off the inside days from Wednesday and Thursday. Today did close below the low of both. So that's lower than the low of Wednesday, lower than the low of Thursday. We touched on that 9-period line. So if this is a strong stock, perhaps that 9-period line is the line in the sand. And it could be used as a reversal area if Airbnb wants to hang tight. So let's see what's going on the intraday. And just not much conviction on this chart either. You can see that first half hour setting itself up as the activation bar. So it was the high, it was the low, where all those other bars after didn't go above the high, didn't go above the low. Until pretty late in the day, we did lose that line. So the 9 was pretty much riding underneath the 26 all day long. Price got above the 9 shortly, but we lost it towards the mid and later point of the day. Airbnb just wasn't the day for it, but still firmly on my list for next week. And CrowdStrike is another one where you look on the daily, you see the 9 above the 26. The Chiku is free, but unless price starts to reverse, Chiku is going to bump into those price bars there, and we don't really know what happens after that. You know, if we keep going down, our 9-period line is also going to cross under the 26. Don't want that. So instead, I'd rather see a reversal from this mini downtrend and go like a magnet back to the 26 and back to the 9 and just resume the uptrend. Haven't had a crazy sell-off. We've tested some kind of low price points that we saw in May and June. I think this could be due to turn around as long as the market does as well. And that is the million, trillion, bajillion dollar question, isn't it? Let's go to the intraday. And yep, this is pretty much a stock that did really pretty much nothing today. Forgot to mention on the daily, it was an inside day. So not above the high of the previous day, not below the low of the previous day for all you stratters out there. And just, boring price action today. We kind of rode along the line. We rode along the 26. We're into the Ichimoku Cloud, but just not really going down, not really going up, kind of just filled with indecision a la the rest of the market. So let's look at one more stock and then wrap this puppy up. And they just can't seem to kill coin. Here on the daily, we can see that we opened up above the 9 and the 26, with that 9 about to cross above the 26. Briefly, we did dip underneath both, but then shwapum, rocket into the Ichimoku Cloud. So let's see what happens here. We did fill that gap that was a gap down earlier in June. So let's see if we can keep going towards those red triangles, try to clear the upper limits of the Ichimoku Cloud. Coinbase, it trades very tight. I like this name. I like trading it. So I'm going to keep this one on my list firmly, because after all, that was just one single day. And on the intraday, we can really see the magic of that day, which of course was today, Friday. We're going to need several more days like that to clear the Ichimoku Cloud, but let's see what that could look like on these intradays. So in the first half hour, that wick shot above the 9, shot above the 26, couldn't close above either. However, it was the second half hour that took off, didn't look back for the rest of the day. Third half hour really launched off above the 9 and the 26. Throughout the day, you can see the 9 even pulling up above the 26, and this thing closed at its, pretty close to its high around 61.89 for the day. So really great one for coin. Let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for sticking with me, y'all. All right, Cloudheads, that's our show for the week. Thanks again so much for tuning in. Launch us that like button, subscribe, share it with a friend. We'll be back doing this same program on Fridays, a little bit different program on Wednesdays, along with everything we do on social media. You can always see us at Clouded Stocks on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. Thanks so much for supporting the show. We couldn't do it without you guys. And just remember, shoot for the stars, and maybe you'll land above the clouds.